You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 210. Hey there. Welcome back to the podcast. How's it going today? I hope that wherever and whenever you are listening to this, that you will do yourself a favor and pause right now in this moment and think about one thing that we can celebrate about you today, right now. Big or small, it doesn't matter, but think of one thing that we're celebrating about you. Now, I also invite you to notice if your brain wants to completely resist this and turn off this episode and skip to the next one. Notice if that's coming up, or notice if your brain is focusing on all the things that have gone wrong today, or where you could have done more, or quote unquote, should have done more. If your brain starts doing this, first of all, you're in very good company. This happens all the time to so many of us, myself included. And I invite you to let those judgments pass by and then redirect your focus on one thing that you're feeling proud of. What are we celebrating about you today? Maybe you wanted to start making more time for breakfast in the mornings, and today you got out of bed 6 minutes earlier and you made it happen. Rock star. Or maybe you paused to check your calendar before you agreed to another commitment on your list. And you know what? When you checked, you realized you don't have time in your time budget and you said no. That's huge. The day I'm recording this marks exactly 1 month that I've moved into my house. And I just scheduled a service appointment for one of the appliances that has been on my list this entire month. And you know what? I just haven't done it yet. It just hasn't been at the top of my priority list until now. But now it's scheduled and I am celebrating that because it feels so good to have it done. So pause. Think about one thing that you're celebrating today. See yourself and recognize the hard work you're doing because it matters. What you're doing matters. And when we make time to see that, it makes the whole process so much more enjoyable. And with that in mind, today what we're doing is talking about the importance of focusing on fun when it comes to setting and working toward and reaching your goals. And if your brain is questioning, thinking, what? Focus on fun when I'm setting goals? Is that even possible? You can have fun when you're working toward a goal. First of all, you're not alone if your brain is thinking that. Second of all, yes, it is possible. Good news. And third of all, you are absolutely in the right place because a lot of us with ADHD brains have a pretty rocky relationship when it comes to goals and goal setting. So many of us have gotten to a point where we resist setting goals altogether. Or if we do end up setting them, there tends to be a lot of heaviness around it. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why this is, why many of us do have this kind of tenuous relationship around goals in this episode. But regardless of the specific reasons why we tend to resist goals and goal setting, I think one of the key components to removing that resistance is by focusing on fun. Now, as it sometimes happens, today's episode was inspired by something completely unrelated to ADHD or coaching or productivity generally. Instead, I was texting with my sister and she wrote a sentence that really stood out to me in her text and it got my brain turning. And this episode is the result. But before I tell you what the sentence was, I feel like I need to give you a little bit of context. So here's the situation. My 4-year-old niece just started taking swimming lessons and she's never taken them before. And so I had texted my sister to see how they were going. And she replied saying that the first day of the lessons, my niece had a lot of fun. But then on the second day, she ended up crying a lot. Now, at first, I figured this was because maybe she felt a little bit scared of the water and didn't want to put her face in the water or something like that. I was a lifeguard and taught swimming lessons for many years, and that was super common for kids. They got real scared of the water. They didn't want to put their face in. But Megan explained that that wasn't it. And in fact, my niece was crying because she was feeling really frustrated and getting hard on herself when she couldn't get whatever the thing was, quote unquote, right. Now, I simultaneously wanted to get in my car and drive to my sister's house and just hug my niece because she's magic and amazing, and I never want her to ever feel any negative emotions ever. Which is not great because I can't stop that. But that's how I was feeling. And also, I could completely relate to her experience 100%. When we get so frustrated, we get hard on ourselves, and we just can't get it right, quote unquote, right. We have that picture in our mind of how things should go or what we think something, quote unquote, should look like. And we understand the concept intellectually and we understand what's supposed to happen. And then we try it. We try and do the thing ourselves, and it just doesn't look like the picture, or it doesn't go as smoothly as the demonstration, right? Something's missing. And quite frankly, I think that experience can be so challenging for any human, full stop. And it's especially challenging when you're incredibly excited and you're trying so hard to make it happen and something's just off, or you just haven't practiced it enough. Okay. So that's the background context of this text that my sister sent me that inspired this entire episode. So a few days later, I text Megan again, and I was just checking in to see how my niece was doing after a couple more days. And she said, so much better, braver and braver every day. We told her to focus on fun. To which I promptly responded, focus on fun is the best goal. And also it sounds like a great podcast topic. And so here we are, not talking about swimming lessons, but we are talking about the importance of focusing on fun. And more specifically, why I think this mantra is one of the key components to helping those of us with ADHD brains set and work toward and achieve our goals. I also think it's one of the key components that most of us completely overlook. In fact, rather than focusing on the fun, our ADHD brains tend to get completely trapped in all or nothing thinking, like we talked about in last week's episode, in episode 209. Many of us, when it comes to goal setting and achievement, we find ourselves striving for perfection. And we usually get quite hard on ourselves when things don't go exactly as planned. So today we're talking about how we can step out of this heavy, more serious stance on goal setting and achievement and instead focus on fun so much more often. Because, spoiler alert, not only does focusing on fun make the progress of setting and working toward your goals so much more enjoyable, but it also makes achieving them so much more likely. All right, so let's dive in. Now, as a quick reminder from last week's episode, we talked about 5 key areas where all or nothing thinking tends to take control in the ADHD brain. And so we talked about achieving and perfectionism. We talked about relationships, decision-making, habits and routines, and how we also get it wrapped up in our success and worthiness. And one of the overarching themes amidst all of these areas is this extreme thinking pattern that really drives all or nothing overall. Right? And it sounds something like, this has to be perfect or there's no point. I have to do it right or I'm a failure. I have to pick the right option or I can't move forward. I have to be perfect right away because sheer effort just doesn't count. If I fail, then I'm not good enough, right? Different iterations of that thought process. And when we put these extreme thoughts into the context of working toward a goal, it's no wonder so many of us have such mixed feelings about goal setting. We love the promise of reaching the goal, but the moment things don't go perfectly the first time, the moment we're human and things don't go exactly according to our plan, our brain can easily slip into those extremes and catastrophize the worst case scenarios and start shaming ourselves that we're a failure or that we've ruined everything or that we shouldn't have even tried in the first place. And while these statements may sound kind of extreme to you since you're just hearing them out of context and you're not working toward a goal at this moment, I'm telling you, for many of us, when we're really in it and we've just hit a stumbling block as we're working toward a goal that we really care about, something that's really important to us, those thoughts seem so accurate. They seem so true. Honestly, it's no wonder so many of us feel incredibly resistant to goal setting and why we're a little bit skeptical of the mere idea that working toward goals could ever possibly be fun when everything does seem so heavy and so intense and we have so much weighing on it. But today, I want to offer this different perspective. Today I want to offer that, working toward a goal can absolutely be fun, and not just when things are going well. In fact, I want to offer that working toward a goal can be fun even when it's hard. And I want to propose that we can do this when, number one, we learn how to stop being so hard on ourselves when things don't go perfectly the first time, and we start recognizing our progress and wins along the way. Number two, we can do this when we learn how to hold our goals more loosely without that relentless pressure driving us behind them. And number three, we can do this when we start intentionally introducing a much more light and playful approach to goal setting overall. When we can learn how to do these three things, and we're going to talk about how to do that today, I'm telling you, that's when goals become fun. That's how we focus on fun. So let's talk about how to do this. And we're going to start by talking about how to recognize our progress along the way. This is such a key step because learning to acknowledge your progress and celebrate your wins along the way is really key for reaching your goal, because you ultimately create this much healthier, much more sustainable approach to goal setting and reaching those goals overall. So to begin, I think it's really helpful when we take that big goal that's really important to us, right? We want to take that goal and we want to break it down into smaller, more achievable milestones. Now, I am sure that this comes as a surprise to absolutely nobody because I talk about breaking things down all the time. But I'm telling you, it's everything. When we have big goals in mind, it can seem incredibly overwhelming and quite distant. We think to ourselves, oh my gosh, it's so big, it's so far off. How on earth could I make that happen? But when we start breaking that goal down into smaller milestones, into benchmarks, we create these manageable steps that are so much easier to tackle. Not only logistically, but also in terms of our mind being able to wrap around the possibility of getting that thing done. Now, these smaller milestones, again, they not only provide us with these doable benchmarks, but they provide us with this clear roadmap that allows us to get to the larger goal. And they provide these really clear pause points for us to be able to slow down and recognize our progress and celebrate our accomplishments. With each of these benchmarks, we have this really powerful opportunity to remind ourselves that we are moving forward. We are making these tangible strides toward our ultimate end goal. By celebrating these milestones and by recognizing our progress, we help reinforce our belief that this goal is possible, that it's happening. We're strengthening our determination and our commitment to making it happen. So again, step one is to release the expectation that we have to do everything perfectly the first time and instead focus on the progress along the way. And one of the best ways we can do this is really start creating some tangible, clear benchmarks that are realistic, that allow us to see our progress with ease. Now, the second step to helping us focus on the fun with goal setting is to let go of our expectations and really hold our goals so much more loosely. I'm telling you, it's incredibly helpful when we can loosen that tight grip that so many of us have on reaching our goals. But how? How on earth do we do that? Honestly, what does holding your goal loosely even mean? So again, for those of us with ADHD and ADHD tendencies who also navigate perfectionism, letting go of our expectations of the outcome can be particularly challenging. The brain's like, I don't even know what that means. Does not compute. Our all or nothing brain holds really tight to the perfect example we saw on Pinterest or the completely unrealistic perfectionist schedule that we created in our mind. And when we don't create that exact result the first time, when we don't replicate the exact Pinterest image, or we don't manage to finish our schedule that has 60 hours worth of work in one day, we can often experience some pretty big emotions in response. We can feel really frustrated or disappointed or get down on ourselves. And we do because we're making this a perceived failure. Oh, I didn't do it right. I didn't get it perfect. And when we do that, we tend to make it mean something pretty unkind about ourselves. We make it mean that we're incapable, we're unworthy, we're not enough because we didn't do it perfectly the first time. So what I invite us to do here is to take a step back and loosen our grip just a bit. Now, there's a lot of ways we can do this. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on 2 for us to play around with this week. Okay, so the first way that we can really start loosening our grip on our goals is by creating a lot more flexibility in the outcome and creating a lot of different opportunities for our definition of success. So this means that we intentionally open our minds to different results, and we show our brain how we can define success in a whole lot of different ways. So for example, let's say that I decide to run in the Boston Marathon, and let's also just pretend that I had any hope of qualifying with that kind of time. I don't, but let's pretend, okay? So I could define success of running the Boston Marathon as being the first person across the finish line, right? I could just have that one definition. I have to be first, otherwise I fail. I guarantee you that if that's the only way I measured success, I would be incredibly disappointed very quickly. Now, I could also measure success of, making it a goal to run in the Boston Marathon and running it. I could make my measure of success the fact that I actually show up on race day. I could make it that I even qualified for the time, that I averaged a certain time in my mile, and that allowed me to even register in the first place. That could be success for me. Or maybe I decide that success actually happened earlier with training and all of the hard work and the miles that I logged prior to the race. From that perspective, I've already reached success by race day. Again, holding the goal loosely can mean staying open to a whole bunch of different outcomes and recognizing that success is not just one thing. There can be a whole lot of different paths and variations available in how we see success. Now, similarly, the second way that we can hold our goals more loosely is by allowing for flexibility in how we actually reach the goal. So the first example that we talked about is having flexibility in what the goal actually is, right? That's what we just talked about with the marathon example. But this example would be in having flexibility in how we actually reach the goal. So rather than sticking rigidly to one predetermined plan, we can actually hold our goals much more loosely when we're willing to adjust the strategy or our method or our timeline as needed. So for example, if I decided that I wanted to take a road trip to New Orleans, okay, I could rigidly hold on to the plan that I must use my car to drive there. Okay, maybe that was the original plan. I'm like, okay, that's the only way I can do it. I have to take my car to New Orleans. But if my car breaks down for some reason, or I just can't drive it anymore for whatever reason, I'm kind of stuck because that was the only way that I decided was a success. I'd fail at the goal if I couldn't drive my car there. But when I'm adaptable in my approach and I allow for more spontaneity and creativity and really the ability to pivot with any of those unexpected challenges, I realize, oh, hold on, I still have plenty of options. I can still reach that end goal of getting to New Orleans. I just don't have to drive my car. I could take a motorcycle. I could catch a bus. I could technically bike or walk. I could hop on a boat in Minneapolis and ride the Mississippi all the way down to New Orleans. Be kind of fun. So again, the second step in helping us focus on fun when it comes to working toward and reaching our goals is to hold these goals much more loosely. And while there are many ways we can do this, 2 very powerful approaches are by, firstly, staying open and flexible in the outcome, and secondly, in our approach to getting there. All right. Then we finally get to step 3, which is all about incorporating a more playful, more lighthearted approach to the process of setting and reaching our goals overall. And there are, again, so many ways that we can do this. In fact, it was really fun for me to brainstorm a bunch of ideas. So I'm going to share several with you here. And I invite you to notice which suggestions stand out the most to you. Which ones make you think to yourself, that one actually does sound kind of fun. I can see how when I think about using that approach, I actually feel a little bit lighter. The goal doesn't feel so heavy. Notice that, okay? Notice when you think, oh, hold on. I could see if I used that approach, or if I tried on that mindset or incorporated that strategy, the entire process could actually be a little more fun. Notice that. Notice how you respond to these different ideas and lean into the ones that most catch your attention. Now, the first suggestion that I have is going to build on a suggestion that I've already made earlier in the episode, which is setting benchmarks and milestones. But to help us bring in a more playful, more light nature, I want to add a qualifier. So I encourage you to set these meaningful milestones and then intentionally choose super fun ways to help you celebrate when you reach each one. So I encourage you to choose ways to celebrate that bring you just absolute delight. Choose ways to help you celebrate that you genuinely look forward to doing. You can ask yourself, how can I choose mini celebrations that bring even greater joy into the process? So for example, maybe you set a goal for yourself to learn how to cook a new cuisine, okay? And you decide to celebrate each benchmark by inviting people you love to come and taste test the key recipes within that cuisine. I mean, how fun would that be? Again, each milestone becomes this opportunity for celebration and a reminder of the progress you're making. And when you celebrate these milestones in a way that brings you joy and adds a sense of fun to the process, I mean, that's just all the more fun overall. Now, my second suggestion to help bring the fun and really create a sense of lightness in the process is to gamify the goal. So turn the smaller steps or the tasks that you need to take in order to get to each benchmark into a game or a challenge. Create a point system or use a timer or compete with yourself. Or if you're a person who likes competition with others, bring in your family or your friends into a competition. I'm personally not a super competitive person, so that final part of the suggestion doesn't work well for me, but I know so many of you have that fun competitive nature. And so if that brings in fun and delight for you, bring that in as well. By gamifying the process, you really help introduce excitement into, what could otherwise be a more mundane activity when it's these smaller, more tedious tasks that are part of the process. They need to get done. They're required in order to get us moving forward on our benchmarks, but we're not super stoked to do them until we gamify them. When we gamify that process, it helps us weave in the fun to really engage the brain in new ways and keep it going. Now, another great way to introduce play and lightness to the goal is to inject variety and novelty into the journey. So this could look like exploring different approaches or techniques or methods related to your goal. Or you might switch up your routines or the environment in which you work or the tools that you're using so that you're keeping things fresh and exciting. I'm telling you, do not underestimate this one. I know for myself, sometimes simply switching up my environment and working outside on the deck or turning on some different music or writing my ideas with a pen and paper instead of using my computer. I mean, these little changes can be exactly what I need to reignite my interest and my enjoyment of the process overall. And then the last suggestion that I have today in regard to incorporating more lightness and playfulness into your goal setting process is to really embrace collaboration and to connect with others who share similar goals and interests. This can be so incredibly powerful when you are working toward both personal and professional goals. By seeking support and collaboration from close friends or small communities in which you're involved, or close colleagues or accountability partners or your coach, there's so much opportunity for new ideas and connections and fresh opportunities to arise. Now, I'm not going to lie. This is not my personal go-to approach since I've always been in a field where you tend to work pretty independently. However, more recently, as I've leaned into collaboration and connection with like-minded people, again, especially over the last 3 to 5 years, it has genuinely added so many additional layers of enjoyment and fun and delight and depth to this journey. And it's something that I plan to lean into even more going forward. So if you also feel a little bit skeptical of this last suggestion around connection and collaboration, first of all, I get it. But I also encourage you to stay open to it. Play around with it. How might you connect with others who are working toward a similar goal or are on a similar journey? Is there a community that you could join or a class you could take that connects you with others who have a similar passion or are pursuing the same new skill? This is such a powerful opportunity for connection and collaboration, and you also create greater space for delight and laughter and fun as well. So this week, I invite you to check in on any of the goals that you're working toward right now. How do you feel about them when you think about working toward each one? Do you feel a sense of lightness? Do you feel delight and filled with joy? Or is there a sense of heaviness and dread around it? Regardless of your answer, but especially if you currently feel some heaviness around the goals, I really encourage you to lean into this 3-step process to help your brain focus on fun. Number 1, release the need to do things perfectly the first time and start recognizing your progress along the way by setting these smaller, achievable benchmarks and celebrating each one. Number 2, begin holding your goals more loosely without that relentless pressure behind them by having flexibility in both the outcome and the approach. And number 3, try introducing a more light, playful approach to goal setting overall by setting meaningful milestones with intentionally fun ways to celebrate, by gamifying your tasks, by introducing novelty and variety to the process, and embracing more collaboration and connection with others who are on a similar journey as you. And I would absolutely love to hear how this is going for you. You can head over to Instagram. I am at I'm Busy Being Awesome, and let me know what goal you're working toward or how you've been weaving fun throughout the process. You can share it on the post for this episode or send me a DM. I cannot wait to connect with you and hear all about it. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you're ready to take these concepts deeper and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group to learn more about my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome. And if it feels like a great fit for you, you can add your name to the waitlist and you'll be the first to know when enrollment opens for the next cohort. Also, have you grabbed the podcast roadmap yet? It has the most popular episodes all detailed for you, so you can get yourself up to speed and ready to work with your ADHD brain. You can grab it now through the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/map. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.